what should be known as the Disrespect for Marriage Act passed in the House earlier this week, and it did so with the support of 47 Republicans in the House. Now, some Republican voters might find themselves wondering why we shouldn't just move on from such a divisive issue, particularly with midterm elections approaching. Well, joining me now to discuss the threats to religious freedom from redefining marriage is Mary Rice Hasson. She's a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center in Washington, D.C. Mary, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much. Wonderful to be on with you.
It's good to have you. And very quickly, first, I want to just give a history lesson. In your judgment, as you've observed this debate and the impact on the culture, what has the impact to religious freedom been from the redefinition of marriage in Obergefell?
It's had a huge impact. And I think we are seeing that play out even in ways that are magnified from year to year. I think in the beginning, everyone thought, okay, now the few people who want same-sex marriage, it's not going to bother anyone else. And that has proved to be untrue, because what we see is an attempt to enforce an ideology to require others to accept this view of marriage, to act as if they believe that marriage constitutes or that sexual difference is not essential to marriage. And so there is a repressive effort to try to characterize people of conscience who don't want to participate in a same-sex marriage, to characterize that as an unconstitutional refusal of someone's constitutional right. So we have a war of words, but we have a war where the law and the power of the law is being brought to bear on religious believers and making it very difficult for people who believe in the truth about marriage to either speak that truth or to act upon it in public life.
Now, Mary, if already the situation in the wake of Obergefell, is this debate over repealing DOMA in state law, is this symbolic, or would it have a further corrosive effect on religious freedom for Americans?
So there are a couple of things going on. You have to realize the Democrats never do anything just to keep the status quo. So the desire to enshrine Obergefell, the right to a same-sex marriage, as they would phrase it, or marriage equality, is really a cover to go further. So if you look at the language of this Respect for Marriage Act, in many respects, it creates federalism problems, but even the language of how marriage is defined is not as straightforward as you would expect. So what we can expect is that the Democrats will stay true to their playbook, which is to always be pushing for the next best thing from their ideological perspective. So I think that's an important thing for people of faith to realize. This isn't as simple as saying, well, it just doesn't change the status quo. It's an attempt by those who support not just same-sex marriage, but polygamous marriage, polyamory, all sorts of variations to push this on down into our culture. And we see how that plays out in schools. We see how it plays out in the cultural dialogue. Whatever the law baptizes, if you will, becomes the norm. It becomes the standard that is being taught.
Mary, there has been some concern, and to your point there about the norm and what is being taught. In the past, the Supreme Court has looked to national public policy when it came very specifically to the loss of tax-exempt status for certain organizations. And they've said, you are in violation of this national policy, therefore you could lose your tax-exempt status. Do you have any concern that officially in state statute or in federal statute redefining marriage could lead to the loss of tax-exempt status for organizations who, because of their faith, are compelled to disagree?
Yeah, I do, because we heard that even in the Supreme Court arguments at the time, that was acknowledged that this could be one of the ramifications down the line. And so we have to understand that the objective for those who are pushing same-sex marriage is not just to acquire the right to get a piece of paper and to have a celebration, et cetera, which was sort of the promise. It's much more than that. It is to shut down and silence those who believe otherwise. And that will translate into taking away tax benefits or tax exemptions or any other contact point with the federal government or a state government, because these views will be biblical views will be demonized as somehow hateful and intolerant.
Do you think it's reasonable to expect that the potential threats to religious freedom are now muted because of the Supreme Court as it is constituted presently?
No, I don't. I think it's important for us to put forward the truth, to protect our religious freedom in every forum, whether it's at the level of state legislators, whether it's in state courts, as well as continuing to litigate cases in the federal arena. Because as we've seen, the makeup of the Supreme Court can shift very quickly. So nothing's guaranteed. We have to be working on the level of public policy, but to protect religious freedom, but we also have to be working within our churches and within our neighborhoods to cultivate an appreciation of how vital this freedom is to our nation's fabric, to the life we share together, no matter what someone believes. It is critical to the fabric of our freedoms. So we have to do that educational piece as well as litigating, and we can't sit back and just assume that it's all taken care of.
Mary Rice Hasson, the Ethics and Public Policy Center, thank you so much for your time today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.